everyone. Today is Monday, July 11th, of 2022. And we are calling this meeting to order and pursuant to Governor Baker's June 16, 2021 order extending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and an extension to allow for remote participation until this week, July 15th, 2022. The July 11th, 2022 Select Board meeting will be conducted via remote participation by the board. The chair should grant permission, we will grant permission, to Westwood Media Center to record the meeting and ask if anyone else wishes to record the meeting. Seeing none, we will go right to the chair's update. So this is one of the things that we get to do and we love to do is to welcome our high school students who have had the pleasure of winning a division championship. And some of you were here last year, and I hope more of you are here again next year. So we have the women's lacrosse team, and I'm probably going to butcher names, so I'm going to let the coach introduce anyone who's here so that I don't kill the names. But I do want to let them know that the select board will present the team with we have a proclamation, and I'm going to read the proclamation. And it says, whereas the select board officially recognizes the Westwood High School girls lacrosse team for its state final win against Wellesley High School on Monday, June 20th, 2022. And whereas the Westwood girls lacrosse team ended the 2022 season undefeated with 25 wins for a total of 49 wins in a row. And whereas Westwood trailed 1-0 less than a minute into the game, but not for long, as the offense started to kick. And with senior Lindsay, how do I say her last name? She was
Diamede.
Thank you. She led the way with 5 goals. And whereas the Wolverines balanced offense saw goals from Kate, from Maddie, from Ava, from Lil, from Carolina, and from Kella, the team did a great job. And whereas the state title wins do not come without a combination of hard work, outstanding team chemistry, great defense and keeping, and strong offensive output, and a supportive fan base. And whereas the 2022 state title win is the program's 10th state title win and the second in a row. And whereas the entire team combined for a 16-1, so much for that one goal within the first minute. State championship win over Wellesley, the Red Raiders, supported by Coach Margot Svatola. Is that how you say it, Margot?
Svatola.
And the outstanding coaching staff. And therefore, this is where we're all getting for. Let it be proclaimed that tomorrow, Tuesday, July 12th, 2022, shall be known as Westwood Girls Lacrosse Day in Westwood, Massachusetts, to honor the 2022 girls lacrosse team on its state championship win. Congratulations, ladies. And Margot, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can introduce the young ladies that are able to join us this evening.
Thank you very much for having us. Second year in a row on Zoom, but we're happy to be here. And I'm very proud of all of the girls for slowly turning on their cameras. They're not used to it anymore. They've been back in school in person, which has been wonderful. But we are very fortunate to have had another great season and on a high note with the state championship win in Division I. It was another tough road as it was last year. And as you said, the team chemistry is what brought us to the state final, and team chemistry and really good people and really good athletes. I can see most of them on my screen, I think, but I'll say as many names as I can. Kate Dean and Lindsay Diamede and Haley Kutzer were our team captains. And then we also have Kara McManus, junior, Kendall Blomquist, senior, Caroline Nazalillo, freshman, Emma Ritchie, senior, Emily and Charlotte DeMeo, they're on the same screen because they're twins and they live together. Livy Dorsky, senior, Hillary Noble, sophomore, Olivia Williams, junior, Lily Beam, junior, Ava Connaughton, out for a walk, junior. I can't see if there are any more on my screen. I'm sure there's everyone else.
Riley and Haley are also here.
Awesome. Riley, Harrington, our starting goalkeeper, who was incredible all season. So yeah, we are very fortunate to have some incredible players. We'll miss our seniors who are off to do great things, but they've left the team in good hands with a really strong rising senior class.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. And I know, Marianne, I'll let you say hello and well wishes.
Well, thank you, Mike. Congratulations, ladies. We are just so proud of you. Really inspiring season. Thanks so much for all your hard work.
And Mr. Gotti is here, our chair, but he's unable to turn on his camera. So, Rob, did you want to say something as well?
I do. I'm driving, so I'm trying to set a good example here. However, Coach, if you could keep coming back to see us, and I hope you do, we may have to make a proclamation to make July Westwood Women's Lacrosse Month.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Congratulations. We hope to see you again next year. Keep up the good work. Until the seniors, have a great time in college, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us. Bye, girls. See you soon.
Okay.
And just like that, they're gone. Okay, well, to balance out the chair's update.
I'm going to bring in Ethan and Shane
Okay,
right now.
thank you.
There's Ethan, and
Ethan's
let me
in.
get Shane. Oh, Shane is coming in. There he is.
All right, well, to balance out our chairman's update, we have some awards to recognize for the 2022 Eagle Scouts. Troop 1 in Islington held a court of honor on June 19th to celebrate the troop's 3 newest Eagle Scouts. The select board recognized Eagle Scouts with accommodations. The board recognizes the dedication, effort, and leadership that's required to achieve the rank of Eagle Scout, something I never got to do. I finished at first class. So congratulations, gentlemen. The select board would like to congratulate Ethan Dutton, Shane McDermott, and someone who's not here, Mr. Patrick McCluckin, on achieving the status of Eagle Scout. Ethan did a project at Gaga Ball Pit at the Hale Reservation for the enjoyment of all. Shane did something at Hale Reservation as well. He was helping with the boys. He dismantled 2 old structures that were a hazard, both summer campers and animals. And in place of the dismantled structures, he placed some perennial flowers and a bench so that people could just enjoy the surroundings of Hale Reservation. And Patrick, who is not able to join us this evening, is an Eagle Scout project, along with other scouts, restored the campfire area at Cat Rock campsite at the Hale Reservation as well. So, gentlemen, you did a great job at Hale Reservation. I'm sure they're very appreciative. It is so hard to get to this Eagle level. Anyone who's ever been in the Boy Scouts, they understand. So congratulations on the dedication and the hard work to get here. I'm sure your parents are very proud. And you are now part of the elite status of the scouting range. So congratulations. Marianne?
I will add my congratulations, Ethan and Shane. Your parents must be very proud, and the town is very proud of you as well. Congratulations.
And so we did do accommodations for them that was presented to you at the time of the Eagle Scout. So we wish you well and congratulations, and keep up the good work. The Eagle Scouts of today are the leaders of the country for tomorrow. So thank you very much, gentlemen, and good luck to you. Rob, did you have anything you want to add, my friend?
I will echo all that has been said. Congratulations, gentlemen. You're an example of the best of us.
All right. Thank you very much, Ethan. Thank you, Shane, for joining us. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like, but I'm going to guess probably not.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Okay. Now that we're done with all of the fun stuff, let's move to our agenda this evening under scheduled action. First thing, we have an event that happens every year here in Westwood. We have the Interfaith Mini Walk for Hunger. This year is scheduled for October 23rd, 2022. And we have joining us Connie Rizzoli. Hi, Connie. Thank you for joining us this evening. And so we've been doing this for a while now. Right now, it's going to be scheduled for Sunday, October 23rd at 2 o'clock and ending at approximately 5 o'clock. And members and friends of multiple faith organizations participate in this walk every year. It's 3 miles and it's open to everyone. It goes down Pond Street, Oak Street, through Sycamore, Alder, Fenview, Martha Jones neighborhoods. And it's everything has been reviewed by Public Safety Department, and it's happened. How many years have we done this, Connie? Do you remember?
I think this is the 10th year.
Fantastic, fantastic. It's always such a good thing. And all of the proceeds are to benefit Project Bread. So any questions that we have, Mariana from Rob?
No questions.
Okay, so Marianne, you're gonna have to do the motion for us.
I have it.
All right.
I move that the select board approve the Interfaith Mini Walk for Hunger for Sunday, October 23rd, 2022, to start at Temple Beth David at 2 p.m. and proceed on a 3-mile walk via the proposed route, contingent upon final approvals from the public safety and the health departments.
I will second that if that is the appropriate protocol at this moment in time.
Sure, and, okay, so, Ms. LeBlanc Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Congratulations and good luck. Let's have some good weather. We'll plan it right now, October 23rd. Good weather day for the mini walk for hunger.
And no
Excellent.
COVID.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Connie.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our scheduled action, we have an Algonquin Gas that is coming in, a First Amendment to our temporary workspace agreement. And it appears that we've signed the agreement, and the long story short, from what I was able to read, is that we're delaying the project a year. Is that correct? Welcome, John. Thank you for joining us. So it looks like the project is going to be delayed for about a year. Is that correct, John? You're on mute, John.
First, I didn't have my video on and I didn't have my speaker on. You're absolutely correct. The project has been delayed by 1 year. And the First Amendment that we drafted essentially just takes the dates in the agreement, which the board reviewed and approved back in earlier this spring, and just changes all the dates by the 1 year to reflect the change in schedule itself.
Okay. Any questions, Marianne?
No questions.
Mr. Gotti, any questions?
No questions from me, Michael. Thank you.
Okay, then I will entertain a motion.
I move that the select board approve and sign the First Amendment to the temporary workspace agreement with Algonquin Gas for the property located at 7 Downey Terrace and for the work to be completed between May 1, 2023 and April 30, 2024.
I will second that.
Okay, Ms. LeBlanc Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Thank you for joining us. Good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may indulge just one moment.
Of course.
I've known Connie Rizzoli since she was Connie Kaufman back in the late 60s. And a tidbit of info for you. She was a legislative intern at the State House and instrumental in drafting the original Chapter 766 for the Commonwealth of Mass. And her husband was a dear friend of mine at Holy Cross as well. So just wanted to pass that tidbit on, and sorry I didn't get a chance to say hello to her when she was on the screen earlier.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm sure she at home, she's still watching, John, so she'll get that.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Okay, so now we have a change to the existing common particular license for the Dunkin' Donuts located at 915 High Street and 400 Washington Street. And we have Mr. Cavallo here, who's going to tell us that in a nutshell, he wants to open an hour earlier.
That's
Is that
correct.
right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
And from what I can tell, there isn't, it's been through all of the committees, and it has come through with a recommendation from everyone that I'm aware of, and the public safety departments have reviewed the applications. Do not have any issues with the change of hours. I'm sure the neighbors would be concerned, but we are not allowing for deliveries at dumpster service until after 6 a.m.
That's correct.
Okay. Mary Ann, any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Gotti, any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. So then, Mary Ann, I will entertain a motion.
Yes, I move that the select board grant the change of hours request for Dunkin' Donuts at 915 High Street and 400 Washington Street on their 2022 common vittler licenses, valid until December 31, 2022. Both CV licenses will be amended to reflect operating hours from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week, with deliveries and dumpster service prohibited until after 6 a.m. Also for the electronic signature of the select board clerk to be affixed to the license.
I will second that motion.
Okay, Ms. LeBlanc Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. So people will be able to have their coffee a little bit earlier, Michael. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank
All
you,
right.
members of the board. I appreciate your time.
We appreciate it, the hard work,
Thank you.
and glad you have work is there to get coffee at 5 a.m.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Okay. Next, we have a public hearing for a small cell communications equipment to be located at 793 High Street. The purpose of this hearing is the petitioner has submitted by Cellco Partnership doing business for Verizon Wireless. For permission to attach, maintain, and to operate a small cell communication equipment tower or small unit, I should say, near 793 High Street. And so this is a public hearing. It is located right on High Street. It is a small cell tower, which has come in front of us several times, at least during my tenure on the board. So it's not unusual for these to come. And they come with pages and pages of documentation to read. So we were able to, believe it or not, I read them all today, Paula, and I'm still asking myself why. I read this every single time, but thank you for providing it to us. So tell us about this, Paula. Give you some time to explain to us.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for letting us come before you again this evening. With me tonight, I just wanted to point out is Stan Yusevich. He's the Verizon's State Government Affairs representative. And we also have Derek Mayhew from Centerline Communications. He is the site acquisition specialist that Verizon worked with on this particular utility pole location. So we are here proposing to attach small cell communications equipment to an existing utility pole in the public right-of-way. And this utility pole is jointly owned by Verizon and Eversource. The purpose of this facility is to provide increased capacity and coverage in an area of the town that Verizon's engineers have determined that it needs additional coverage. The service isn't as good as we would like it to be in this particular area of town. So this facility will be attached to an existing pole using existing infrastructure and will consist of a single small wireless antenna attached to the side of the pole at a height of 26 feet. And then lower down on the pole will be a radio unit and an electric meter. And these particular units are very effective to use in discrete areas where coverage is needed in a small area. And it precludes the need to do additional infrastructure such as cell towers. It addresses a particular area of need. So we're happy to address any questions that you may have. As you noted, we've been before you before in the past. And there are several small cells in Westwood already.
Well, let's see. Ms. LeBlanc Cummings, do you have any questions that you'd like to have addressed?
Yeah, I do have one. I was hoping you could explain in layperson's terms what the increase in coverage is expected to be with the installation of this small cell communications equipment in that area.
Sure. Well, I'll start and then I'll turn it over to Derek Mayhew to add some additional information. This particular small cell will not only add coverage, meaning it will increase the area in which the signal is available at a good strength, but it will also increase capacity, meaning the number of devices within the immediate area that can be carried simultaneously will increase. So as you know, in households these days have many wireless devices. So we've found that there really is an issue with capacity as well as coverage, as well as the service area. It's the actual number of simultaneous devices that can be used in this area at one time that needs to be addressed. So I'll ask Derek if you have anything additional that you'd like to add in response to that question.
Evening. No, I mean, I think you pretty much addressed it, Paula. In the layman's terms, these things kind of work in a line of sight. So if there's a tree or a building or something that's going to interfere with the small cell signal, they're just not, it's not like a cell tower. It doesn't have that high powered coverage radius. So these are going to be, basically they work line of sight for the most part. So I'll be trying to locate them on, intersections or main roads away from trees and that type of stuff. For this one, I mean, they won't really know until they turn it on, but maybe a couple tenths of a mile in either direction.
Okay.
As a barometer, again, it really depends on, until you get it live and see there's some tree coverage to the east. So I don't know how much that's going to affect it. They won't really know, but that's basic, a good barometer to use.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Gotti, any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. And Marianne, I will entertain a motion, although I take that, yes, I have you, Mr. Hearn, thank you. This is a public hearing, so the public is entitled to reach out, and we have the questions and answers. So far, there are no questions being typed yet. However, we'll give it a minute for the public to put in any questions and answers they may have as part of the public hearing.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Mr.
I
Coleman.
don't know. I know Nora's on. I don't know if there's any comments that she would like to make.
Okay. Nora, did you have anything you'd like to add while we wait to see if there are any questions to be answered for the public?
Sure, just I recommend the standard condition of making sure that all of the equipment is the same, painted the same color, a uniform light gray color.
Okay, so we do have the first question. It's being asked by Eric Dana. Eric, if you would be kind enough at some point to type in your address just for the record. But in the meantime, Eric wants to know, what is the band being used? Is it 4G, 5G, 5G millimeter?
It's 4G.
4G, thank you. And Eric lives, for the record, at 790 High Street. Thank you, Eric. Any other questions that you may have? Eric is the only one that has appeared so far. Okay, seeing no further questions. Is there an adequate time to address any questions?
You have, they can also use their raise hand function if they wish.
Okay. Not seeing any more. Okay, Marianne, Ms. LeBlanc Cummings, I would entertain a motion, and I'm going to suggest that perhaps we should do B first, Mr. Hearn, instead of A. Wouldn't we want to close the public hearing before we vote?
No, you should vote, then close the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Just for clarification, I want to make sure. All right, Ms. LeBlanc Cummings, you have clarification now.
Thank you. So I move that the select board grant permission to Cellco Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless, to install small cell communications equipment on pole number 19-85 near the property with an address of 793 High Street. The design of the two small cell installations shall be in conformance with the submitted petitions of said company dated February 1, 2022, and with the following conditions. Number one, all components of the wireless facility shall be painted and maintained in a neutral gray color acceptable by the Community and Economic Development Director or the town planner. Number two, all existing double poles in the vicinity of the proposed small cell installations shall be removed prior to the issuance of any building or electrical permits for those installations.
Okay, Mr. Gotti, before you second, I did have a question, another question that I just want to ask. Eric is still asking the question. Is there opportunity for other cell providers to use this power, or is this exclusive to Verizon?
No, it is just a utility pole. It's not a tower. So it really can only a function for one provider. And that would be Verizon.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Gotti, second.
second.
Okay. Mr. LeBlanc Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti.
Aye.
Okay, and I vote aye as well. Thank you very much. Let's see.
Thank
Do I have
you.
a second motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, if I may, yes.
I move that the select board close the July 11, 2022 public hearing on the Verizon small cell communications equipment for 793 High Street.
Second.
Okay, Mr. LeBlanc Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Okay, thank you very much. That public hearing is now closed. Okay, as long as all the players are still here, let's do the second one. We have a second public hearing for a small cell communications equipment at 692 High Street, which this matter came before us before on March 29th, 2022 for the installation of a small cell communications equipment on pole number 13-104 located at 692 High Street and the proposed height restrictions. And now you come before us because we need to lower the height restrictions from 10 feet to 9 feet. Is that correct?
That's correct. We are respectfully asking you to waive or modify that particular condition because our agreement with Eversource does not allow us to install electric meters higher than 9 feet.
Okay. Nora, any comments or questions for us on that?
Yeah, if you might recall, when this application first came, the installation was on the side of the pole, and then it was rotated, I think, 45 degrees so that it was out of the line of traffic. The increased height was a request before we realized that it could be rotated. So I think as long as it's rotated, so a truck or a high car coming through there can't clip the edge of the equipment, I think it's fine at 9 feet.
Okay. Mr. Blake Cummings, any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Gotti, any questions?
No, not at all.
Okay, and again, because this is a public hearing, questions and answers can be addressed in the chat, or you can raise your hand, and we will address those as well. But we did pass this at 10 feet back on March 29th, so that hearing took place then, and there didn't seem to be many objections at that point, although I do remember one or two. So, but for the 9 feet, I don't think there's much of a question. So, do we have any other questions? I'm just filling time, that's why I'm talking. So while we wait for others to see if they're gonna type anything. Okay, seeing no questions in the box. Tish is canceling them out, so there are no questions and answers. So I will entertain a motion. Mr. LeBlanc Cummings?
I move that the select board amend its motion from March 29, 2022 for the small cell communications equipment to be installed on pole number 13-104 near 692 High Street, and for the equipment to be installed no more than 9 feet above grade level per the agreement between Eversource and Verizon.
Second.
Okay, Mr. LeBlanc Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Gotti?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. And a second motion, Mr. LeBlanc Cummings.
Yes, thank you. I move that the select board close the July 11, 2022 public hearing on Verizon small cell communications equipment for 692 High Street.
And I will second that motion as well.
Okay. Mr. LeBlanc Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Gotti?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
All right, moving along next, there we go. We have our public hearing for the cable license renewal for Verizon New England. And this is for the select board in the town of Westwood as a statutory cable license issuing authority to hold a remote public hearing in connection with the town's Verizon New England cable television license renewals proceedings. Joining us this evening, we have Mr. William August, who is special counsel, who negotiated with Verizon about this. Mr. August, would you like to say anything before we open it up to the public? You're on mute. There you go.
I would
Sorry,
like
John.
to just briefly thank the Verizon for being a very good negotiation partner. John Harrington, counsel for Verizon, is with us this evening, and he was. You don't get everything you want in negotiations, but Verizon listened to the town's requests. You can imagine in a 60-page renewal contract, there are several things that have to come up. And Verizon would listen to us and meet us halfway or all the way in terms of the capital funding negotiations and the verbiage. So I also want to thank the Chris Coleman and Patrick Ahern. They pulled together an unbelievably diligent team that would attend every Zoom and participate fully and put a lot of eyeballs on the documents and make sure the negotiations agenda was very strong. It's a very strong renewal for the town, based on my experience. So thank you to Chris Coleman and Patrick and his whole team. They too were there at every single turn, and what can be a tough process, but it did go well. So it will assure the continuity of your primary financial commitments under the existing license and then some. So it's financially good. It's technologically similarly continues for the Westwood Media Center, which is a very active center. The kind of technical video origination and channels and high definition enhancements combined with the financial support. So I feel very confident. And my sense was I don't want to speak for anyone else, but that was the consensus of all the members of the team, which were a very good team. Donna also, and Tish, Donna McClellan and Tish. And then we would consult with Melinda to get a reality check on some of the technical things and whatnot. So it was a very good team.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. And so, Melinda, we're going to give you some airtime since you're usually behind the camera instead of in front of the camera. So did you want to talk about the deal? And Westwood Media is very happy with it, I'm assuming?
Yeah, it was a great experience this time around. We were heavily involved, and we are happy to stay at the 5%. We got Comcast up to that 5% our last negotiation. So now Verizon has committed the 5% for the next 5 years. And we were happy with the capital. It was pretty close to what we were asking for. And we're happy to have it in the first 3 years of the contract so that we can, tend to some of the maybe larger scale needs that we're looking at for future capital purchases. So all good.
Excellent. Thank you, Melinda.
Yeah.
And I know Mr. Harrington's camera's off, but Mr. Harrington, thank you for being cooperative with the town as well. We do appreciate that. It's always great to have attorneys reach agreement instead of fighting all day. So thank you very much for your assistance. This is a public hearing as well. I don't know that we need to have questions about the great deal that we are able to work out with Verizon, but anyone who would like to have questions or comments, you can put them in the question and answer box and we'd be happy to address them. But I think this is a great deal. We have moved up to the 5% with all of the providers in Westwood, and we thank them for assisting with such great programming that we have through the Westwood Media Center and the ability to cover all of our meetings a lot better than we ever have. So seeing no questions, nor did I really anticipate that we would have any on such a great deal, but Mr. Blaine Cummings, I would be happy to entertain a motion.
I move that the select board approve and sign the 5-year license renewal with Verizon New England, Inc. with an effective date of July 17, 2022 to July 16, 2027.
Second that motion.
Okay, Mr. Blaine Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Gotti?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. And
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You may, Mr. Ahern.
Mr. August, do those need to be wet signatures?
Verizon is accepting electronic copies and scans. So it really would not make a difference for that kind of transmittal.
Okay, so Mary Ann, if you move to approve electronic signatures on the agreement, Tish can get that done in the office.
Sure. I move to accept electronic signatures on the document, the renewal document contract.
Can I make one friendly amendment to that? Subject to it being acceptable to Verizon, because we don't want to hand off something that for some reason is not. Now, that's all subject to being acceptable to Verizon in that form. And then just as commentary, my experience has been that is consistent with what Verizon accepts, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Accept the friendly amendment.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Gaudio, second. I think that's an aye. Can we take that as an aye, Mr. Hearn?
Out of the doctrine and necessity, you can second it, Mr. Walsh.
Okay. Mr. Gaudio, we're having trouble with your audio, so out of necessity, I will second the motion. Mr. LeBlanc Cummings.
Okay.
Aye.
Mr. Gaudy.
Aye.
Okay, and I vote aye as well. Thank you very much.
Mr. Walsh, one more thing.
Yes, Mr. Hearn.
We
I
got
have a
to
further-
public.
You have to close the hearing, yes.
Yeah,
I have a further motion that the select board close the July 11, 2022 public hearing on cable license renewal with Verizon New England, Inc.
Second.
Okay, Mr. LeBlanc Cummings.
Aye.
Mr. Gaudy.
Aye.
Okay, and I vote aye as well. Hearing is closed.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Coleman.
yes, ma'am, I just want to thank Attorney August for his guidance throughout this process. He certainly made it very smooth and very informative to our internal team as well as the presentation this evening. So thank you, Mr. August.
I second that. It's been a pleasure working with you, Mr. August.
Likewise, everyone. Teamwork. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, then we hope you're still around when the next contract is up in 5 years.
Okay. I hope so. Okay, thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank
Enjoy
you
the
very
summer.
much.
Good. Stay healthy.
You too now.
Okay.
And so next in, we have a Forbes Road traffic study that was performed and will be addressed again, but it's before us this evening. I was able to actually sit in on the original meeting with the neighbors. And so Todd is joining us as well, or no, maybe not.
Mr. Chair? So,
Yes.
Unfortunately, Mr. Corcoran has a personal matter that he wasn't able to attend. He does certainly send his apologies to the board. We do have Liz here. And if I could, I can just give a quick little overview. Liz provided a great presentation to residents on Forbes Road and surrounding areas back in June. The presentation that she's going to make today is very similar to that, with some additional information for the board and for your viewing audience. And then we would just like to talk to the board about some ideas after the presentation. And obviously, if the board has any questions, we'll do our best to answer those questions.
Okay, so Elizabeth Ullman is here. She's from TEC, and she has been working on the project. And so, Elizabeth, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much for having me this evening. I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, we can.
perfect. This is the presentation. I'm just going to try and go through really quickly the presentation that we gave to the residents a few weeks ago. The project understanding for studying Forbes Road was to identify the potential cut-through traffic between Canton Street and Everett Street within the neighborhood, evaluate the volume of truck traffic through the neighborhood, and observe the vehicle speeds on Forbes Road. So we did a fairly extensive data collection program back in November, turning movement counts at Forbes Road in Everett and Forbes Road at Canton from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. on a Tuesday and Wednesday in November. We also put a tube counter on Forbes Road for 3 full days that recorded speed of vehicles and classification. The yellow triangle or rectangle, excuse me, is where the tube counter was placed on Forbes Road, and the 2 blue rectangles are where the existing speed humps are on Forbes Road. So the result of the data collection indicates that Forbes Road carried an average of 794 vehicles a day. 85th percentile speed, which is the speed at which 85% of the vehicles are going at or below, is 28 miles per hour southbound and 24 miles an hour northbound. The posted speed limit on Forbes Road is 30 miles an hour. So people are going generally below the posted speed limit. A maximum of 50 vehicles a day were traveling between 30 and 35 miles per hour, again, within that 5 miles an hour of the posted speed. There were 10 vehicles a day recorded traveling over 35 miles an hour. But in general, I would say that the speed humps are working in the vicinity of the count location. 15 to 18 delivery vehicles per day of a large truck, of a box truck size, and less than 5 large vehicles per day. Those would be something like an appliance delivery or even a landscaper with a truck and a trailer would be classified as a large vehicle. All of these data points are generally consistent with a local road. So nothing stands out here as being out of the ordinary for a local road. However, we were able to do a cut-through evaluation determined using the count video. So the turning movement counts at either end of Forbes Road were done using video counters of a sufficient clarity to be able to say, oh, there's a red sports car or black SUV, and track the vehicle making a right turn off of Canton Street, traveling down Forbes, and then making a right or a through at Everett. And then similarly, vehicles making a left from Everett and then making the left onto Canton Street. So we were able to determine 68% of the total southbound traffic and 62% of the total northbound traffic between 7 and 5 were cut through vehicles. I will note that after 5 o'clock, the volumes along Forbes Road in both directions significantly dropped off. An average of 20 vehicles an hour cut through per direction, or 40 in total. So there are existing traffic calming measures on both Canton Street, Everett Street, and Forbes Road at this time that seem to be functioning in an appropriate manner, at least on Forbes Road. But we did try to consider some mitigation for the cut-through traffic. We note that any mitigation must consider emergency responder access. So we had extensive conversations with Westwood PD and fire department. The enforceability of mitigation. So any signage would have to be enforceable by the police department. It couldn't just be put up and not be able to, give someone a ticket if they disobeyed. And we have to consider the impact to adjacent streets. So what we presented to the neighbors was essentially a reconstruction of the intersection of Forbes Road and Everett Street. I will note that half of this intersection is in the town of Norwood. So we recommended to the neighborhood to restrict Forbes Road to right turns entering from Everett and left turns exiting from Forbes Road, essentially restricting the lefts off Everett and the rights off of Forbes Road, which would be the primary cut-through movement. If this is implemented, what we would hope is that vehicles would stay on the major highways to get to their destination, but it is possible that people will divert to Canton Street to Everett Street to make their desired movements. So then we put this up for questions, and Chris did receive some questions and comments from the adjacent neighbors. I will note that there was a question regarding any other alternatives that could be done that were simple and cost effective for the town. And as strange as it may seem, centerline striping gives a visual impression of reduction in a roadway width, and it's low impact, low cost, and it can reduce vehicle speeds between 1 and 7 miles an hour. It has been seen as, it's called a road diet in some circles, because it's, you know, making the roadway thinner. MassDOT has actually placed this in its speed reduction toolkit and seen a 4 to 9% reduction in vehicle speeds, which would be about 3 miles an hour on Forbes Road. So again, you'd get people down closer to the 25 mile an hour if that was desirable by the residents. So that is the additional information that the residents had asked for. And I will happy to answer any questions from the board or the Chris or the public. Or
So Elizabeth, I'll start. I have I guess my first question would be, is the primary concern speed, or is it amount of vehicles? Do we know?
It's both from the residents adjacent to Forbes Road. The concern is those 10 vehicles that are going above 30 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour, above 35 miles an hour, because they are the most noticeable, right? And if they happen to come when their child is standing outside waiting for the bus, it's very noticeable. They are very hard to get rid of, though, at 100%. But I think that's a concern. And then the residents do want to see a reduction in volume on their road.
I have a couple of questions. You made the statement earlier that some of the data was nothing out of order for a local road. Do you recall that?
Right.
I wasn't quite sure what you meant by that. Could you elaborate, please?
Sure. Roadways are designed to accommodate a certain capacity of vehicles. So Forbes Road is classified as a local collector roadway because of the number of side streets that come into it. It collects the traffic volume, and then puts it out onto the more substantial roadways through the neighborhood. So local roadways are designed to carry between 1,200 to 1,500 vehicles a day. And so this road is at little less than 800. Even considering a COVID adjustment, it would still be below that 1,200 expected volume of daily traffic.
Thank you. And if I could follow up regarding the center line speed reduction, you talked about some data that you have that's shown that. Is that right?
Correct. MassDOT, like I said, has accepted centerline striping as one of their options in their speed reduction manual. And then there's some data points from the Institute of Transportation Engineers and FHWA on this reduction in speeds. Not much more than 7 miles an hour. It's typically in the 3 to 5 mile an hour range. So it's modest, but it is noticeable because people narrow their vision. And so instead of a 24-foot wide pathway through a neighborhood, you're supposed to stay on the right-hand side of the double yellow line. You only have 12 feet.
Do you expect that the impact of centerline striping would be further impacted by the fact that there are speed bumps there as well? Mm-hmm. Or are you taking that into account with the 3 to 5 miles an hour?
That would be hopefully in addition to the reduction that is being seen right now with the speed humps. So okay. The speed humps are keeping it generally below the 30 miles an hour. So you might capture some more of the 30 to 35 mile an hour people and keep them below 30.
Thank you.
So Elizabeth, I did have another question for you. I'm sorry, Mr. Gotti, if you're waiting patiently. I noticed, when you come to a crosswalk, if you ever put those signs in the middle of the road that say that you need to stop for pedestrians in the crosswalk, that seems to slow a lot of cars down. And it's actually a physical sign in the middle of the road that can be removed, obviously, in bad weather. Have they thought about using those? Because it makes you, fit into that side of the road which actually does slow down people when they, instead of having the flexibility to go across the line or to jump the line.
Right. That's a very good point. People don't want to hit those. They're, especially if you have a newer car, you don't know it doesn't do a lot of damage, but people don't want scratches on their cars. So they do tend to move over and slow down to avoid something physical in the road. That's why, those center medians on Canton Street work pretty well, because people want to slow down when they go around those. They want to avoid a physical separation. So yes, that's absolutely something that could be put in. I know there's a couple of crosswalks on Forbes Road that they could place them there.
Right. Mr. Gotti, did you have any questions? And then I see that Officer Vinci has joined us, and we'll let Officer Vinci comment if he'd like.
Yes, I do have some I do have questions. Can you hear me, Michael?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So first off, Liz, do you have any estimate as to what any of those mitigation techniques might do to impact traffic on either Canton or Everett Street?
So there's something like the striping or the signage on the crosswalk probably won't divert traffic. It will just slow people down that are already on Forbes. So the physical mitigation that we presented to the neighborhood, that would definitely restrict the cut through traffic, and that as much as we would like people to stay on the highways to make that movement, that would likely put some people onto Canton and Everett.
Do you have any estimate as to what the increase in volume would be on those two roads?
Well, there's 20 vehicles per hour in each direction making that cut through movement. So say most of those would be moved. So an additional 40 vehicles an hour on Canton and Everett.
Chris Coleman, do we have any thoughts on how we might look at this holistically? I'm reluctant to, take up the recommendation as proposed without actually studying what the impact would be to adjacent neighbors.
Yes. So, Representative Member Gotti, what the things that we're looking at right now. So this is an update to the board regarding similar to the presentation that was made on June 14th to those residents on Forbes Road and surrounding areas. However, one of the things that we have discussed internally since receiving some inquiries and some concerns from residents on Everett Street and Canton Street, one of the recommendation that we have is we do a baseline traffic count for Canton, Forbes, and Everett. And recommendation would be to do that sometime after Labor Day because of obvious reasons I think the board knows, but just to state those, that we will have our normal traffic, we anticipate our normal traffic patterns and traffic flow and traffic volumes after Labor Day when school's back in session and when typically the summer vacation folks have returned back to Westwood and that traffic pattern happens as it currently does. I would like, if it's okay, Mr. Chair, if we could just have Lieutenant Vinci just discuss and share with the board what the Westwood Police Department is doing in this area currently.
Since he was next up, yes, he can. Lieutenant Vinci, did you want to jump in?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Good evening, everybody. So since the meeting and for this last several months, we've continued to have a presence in that neighborhood. Not just for truck traffic, Amazon traffic, but overall traffic concerns. So we continue to have a presence down there. To be honest, our officers are not finding much or many violations to enforce, but they are down there. They're and I think people are kind of gotten accustomed to seeing our folks down there. So I think at least, if nothing else, we've been a deterrent for the motoring public to behave themselves in those neighborhoods. But we're certainly willing to continue that presence and to help out in any way we can to, make the neighbor and the neighborhood overall safer place. So, but in to echo what Chris just said, obviously traffic throughout town is down precipitously during the summer months. So it's even more noticeable when you're in the middle of a morning and after everyone's gotten to work, you really don't see many vehicles until the evening rush hour. So, I imagine just like normal, when everyone comes back and the schools are open, the traffic will increase. And during those times, we'll continue to be there and to monitor any issues that arise.
Okay, thank you. And thank the officers for their continued support of this.
Mr. Chair, if I could
Yes.
just add on to that. So the other things that we're doing internally, we're looking at different options. In addition to the baseline traffic count that we're recommending to the board, we're also looking at different options using technology that we would like to provide some findings to the board after. If the board supports this traffic study happening after Labor Day, we will present that to the board when we present that analysis.
And Chris, it's expected that that would be as to both count and speed?
Yes. We'll conduct the same study on all three roads at the same time.
Okay. I just wanted to raise the issue. I also attended the forum with the Forbes Road neighbors in June, and there was a question raised about the positioning of the tubes to try to make sure we're really capturing the speeds there. I think there was a specific concern about the top of Forbes Road coming down. So just wanted to raise that. Are we, Liz, are you thinking of incorporating those concerns in looking at the speed there?
Yes, we did hear that concern about the northern end of Forbes Road and then very close to the southern end. So we'll have to identify exactly where we want to put the tube counters, but we might put more than one this time just to make sure that we capture everybody's concerned area.
If I could just speak to that for a moment. I know Officer Conley, one of our traffic officers, did post our equipment in those areas where the neighbors felt that it was a more of an issue that the tubes may not have captured. And as far as I know, it was the same sort of data that was reflected in the engineering report. So I'm not positive on that. I don't have specific numbers, but I know it was the baseline for those areas as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Officer Vinci. Seeing no.
Michael, one other
Mr.
comment from me.
Sure.
Chris, would this be another reason for trying to get some additional public support for that I-93, I-95 interchange project? Because I imagine if we could improve the flow and not have people exiting trying to find a more efficient way using Waze or Apple Maps or Google Maps or whatever they may use, that would be a beneficial thing to the entire neighborhood.
I certainly agree. That would certainly be helpful. I would also like to add, and Liz, please chime in, and Lieutenant Vinci as well. We're in a different era right now, and that is with the GPS world. We have a number of vehicles that are using GPS, and the GPS often, for those who have it selected, find the fastest route from point A to point B. And sometimes those faster routes will take them through neighborhoods that have experienced in the past less traffic. So I think this is something that we will continue to look at, not just for Forbes Road, but for other areas within the community. But right now we are focused on Forbes Road. But that is one of the things that we're dealing with, some of the technology of today and the GPS systems that are out there.
Okay, any other comments before we move along to our motion? All right, seeing none. Ms. LeBlanc Cummings?
Yeah, I move that the select board authorize a baseline traffic study for Forbes Road, Canton Street, and Everett Street to be conducted in September of 2022.
I second that.
Okay, Ms. LeBlanc Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Gotti?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. And Elizabeth, you heard our concerns, so please be sure to try to address those as part of the study, so we can do it once and get it right the first time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
Liz, thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it. Lieutenant Vinci, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, under new business, Ms. Dukeman has been patient and sitting in that chair, and she has a couple of things before us this evening. First, we have the fiscal year 2022 year-end close. So Pam, I know you amended at the last minute today or earlier today to supplement our 2022 budget to close out fiscal year 2022. So Ms. Dukeman, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. We have been working hard to close out fiscal 22, ending another year. And we would like to ask the board to take action just to approve 2 small transfers from your reserve account to help us close the year. So as the board is aware, our finance and accounting departments monitor the budget throughout the year, both the expenditure budget and our revenue budget, to make sure we're looking at any issues that might arise. We handle any issues that might come up by either coming to the select board during the year and taking a transfer from your reserve account, or presenting transfers through our Article 1 and 2 budget supplements at town meeting. And then if we have any final items, we do those as a year-end close from the reserve account. So I do want to thank our school and municipal department heads for all the attention they've given the budget this year, monitoring their activity throughout the year. They work really hard to keep on top of budgets as they fluctuate throughout the year. I also want to thank our accounting and finance staff, particularly Maria Leary, our town accountant, for all the work she does throughout the year to make sure we're on track. So would request 2 transfers. The first is $27,000 to the police salary budget. And that's really the final closeout due to that department did have a lot of transition this year with several retirements. And then $13,000 to the Council on Aging salary budget. And that was for some additional demand that they saw this year, kind of once COVID ended and people could get back out. That would be $13,000. So in total, $40,000 from your reserve account. And I would point out, I do think on that COA, the demand in the drivers, that is something we may see again in FY23, and we'll need to adjust the budget and maybe perhaps look at building in some additional funding in the FY24 budget as that process starts. There was a lot of pent up demand from people who hadn't been able to get out to various doctor's appointments and things like that. And once they were able to, the COA wanted to respond to that and help out our senior residents. So those would be the 2 items to transfer from your reserve account. You started the year with $295,000 in your reserve. You made 2 transfers during the year of $95,000. So there's currently $200,000 in that account, enough funding to cover this $40,000. And then that would be our final items needed to close out our fiscal 22.
I don't have any questions. Pam, Ms. LeBlanc Cummings?
No questions?
Okay, Mr. Gotti, any questions?
No questions from me.
Okay, then I would be happy to entertain a motion.
I move that we allocate the amount of $40,000 from the reserve account in allocation of $27,000 to the police salary budget item and $13,000 to the Council on Aging salary budget.
Second that motion.
Okay, Ms. LeBlanc Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Gotti?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Thank you, Pam, for hard work.
Thank you.
But you don't get to go yet, Pam. We're going to talk about ARPA. I know it's your favorite topic.
We're going to talk about ARPA. I do have just a brief presentation, if I can share my screen. That's okay?
Yes, you may.
Okay, and if you can see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so just quickly, I know we've talked about ARPA before, but now as we start to go forward and allocate some of the funds, just quickly to review. So May 2021, the federal government came out and launched the American Rescue Plan Act, and that's where the ARPA designation comes from. You'll also see this SLFRF, which is State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. So these are the two little acronyms that you will see, SLRF and ARPA. This funding was meant to kind of help states and local governments move beyond the COVID-19 emergency. It's a significant amount of funding to help address what happened during that impact, get people back on track, and kind of move people forward. The intent of ARPA is different than what the COVID funding was. We had CARES funding when the COVID impact first started happening. That was intended to be more of an emergency public safety nature. The ARPA funding is structured to be more kind of long-term recovery and investment. And just quickly, as we mentioned, CARES, the town got about $1.39 million in CARES funding a couple of years ago. We did use the majority of that, $960,000 for the schools, mostly in terms of helping them set up the remote learning and the technology and that type of thing, $435,000 for municipal. The schools also received some specific school reopening funds, $675,000 from the state. So that's the CARES in the past year that's gone. Now moving forward on ARPA, again, intended to be more recovery-based long-term investment. So while ARPA first came out in May 21, there was still a long review and discussion of the rules and what were the eligible expenditures, that type of thing. Those were not finished until the spring, particularly April 2022. So specific eligible spending includes to replace lost public sector revenue. They're calling that revenue loss category. We're going to talk about that. Support the COVID-19 public health and economic response, provide premium pay for eligible workers, invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And I will point out it was very specific, kind of the infrastructure was the water, sewer, and broadband. There were a couple of items specifically mentioned that were not allowed to be spent with this funding. Communities or states cannot use this to transfer any fundings to their pension obligations, use it for any like just direct reduction of taxes, put any funding into reserve accounts, or use it for any existing debt service. So those items that are not allowed really clearly show that the intent is for new investment, new projects, not to kind of pay off past existing obligations. The ARPA funds must be fully obligated by December 31, 2024, and fully spent out by December 31, 2026. So when we mentioned the revenue loss, one component, one allowable category of spending was to replace revenue loss. And what came out here at the end in the final guidelines was that the federal government deems that every community could have an assumption of revenue loss of $10 million. The original guidelines had a very complicated formula for every community to kind of come up with their particular revenue loss. And when we talk revenue loss, there wasn't direct loss, but they also looked at an assumption of growth. So as we looked over the last couple of years of our COVID, we didn't really have significant reduction in any revenue, but these guidelines were designed to say, well, there was an assumption that your revenue would have normally grown if not for the pandemic. So the original guidelines, very complicated formula to come up with revenue loss. Hearing all of that feedback, federal government came out and gave everyone a standard allowance of the $10 million. And they particularly did that to ease the calculations and kind of standardize it for everyone. And they wanted to provide the broadest use of funding for communities. Because any of your ARPA funding that comes under this total amount of loss of $10 million, a community can use it for any service traditionally provided by a government, unless it fits one of those categories that we mentioned earlier. So the revenue loss gives very broad authorization to communities to use the funding for any service they would traditionally provide for. Again, not those couple of things we mentioned: pensions, debt, reserve account, reduced taxes. So obviously this revenue loss category is very important. Again, what they did not allow you to use it for, as I mentioned. And so this was designed to be the most flexible use of category for the funding. And there's a whole streamlined reporting and compliance requirement if you're using the money under the revenue loss category. So looking at our ARPA funding, we are receiving ARPA funding through two different allocations. One directly to Westwood, $1.7 million, and then funding to Westwood through Norfolk County, $3.1 million. So the total allocation of our ARPA funding, $4.9 million. Looking first at the direct funding to Westwood, $1.7 million. This funding is sent directly to us in two deposits of $858,000. We received the first payment last June, 2021. And the second payment was expected this calendar year, and we did in fact just receive that last Friday. So we now have on hand $1.7 million of this direct funding to Westwood. We are responsible for all of the reporting and compliance with this federal funding. Looking at the funding coming through Norfolk County. So across the country, some of the ARPA funding went to counties, as county governments outside of Massachusetts provide services for communities. It's very different in Massachusetts. So counties across the country often provide the public safety or DPW type services for a lot of smaller communities in the county. That's not how counties function here in Massachusetts. So this really was a flaw in how the funding was sent out, that it was distributed to the county, but earmarked for each town. So when Norfolk County got funding, it was a specific earmark for each community. So Norfolk County got about $148 million for 28 communities within Norfolk County. Norfolk has to handle that and do all the direct reporting. So again, we had $3.1 million in funding that was identified for Westwood, should have come directly to Westwood, but went through Norfolk County. So there's a couple of problems with that process. First, Norfolk, did not have the infrastructure to handling all of that. Norfolk's annual budget is about $32 million. So suddenly now they had, 5 or 6 times that revenue that they need to comply with federal rules for, and how to handle and how to distribute that out to communities. So Norfolk, in order to keep that, has hired various law firms and accounting firms and technical teams to set up distribution portal and that type of thing. To pay for that infrastructure, Norfolk County is taking a 3% fee out of each community's funding. That's about $95,000 for Westwood. And Norfolk has indicated that of that fee, 2.5% is going to pay for these administrative costs, and 0.5% for county projects that they'll determine what to do. So again, this was like a difficult issue for communities in Massachusetts. The county could have distributed their funding back to the state of Massachusetts, who would have sent it out directly to communities. Norfolk County chose not to do that. Other counties in Massachusetts did do that. And so now those communities have received their funding directly, but Norfolk and I believe Plymouth County were the only two who did not. One of the major problems with the funding now being through Norfolk County concerns that revenue loss category. So while I mentioned the state feds, the Treasury Department determined that every community has a $10 million standard allowance for revenue loss, Norfolk County is interpreting that as the county for a whole has $10 million. So while Westwood, if all of this money came directly to us, we would be far under the $10 million standard allowance. That's not the case because of this running through the county. So the county's interpretation reduces Westwood's revenue loss over a county portion to $331,000. So again, while we should have the $10 million limit per this issue with the county, our revenue loss is 1.7 million that's coming directly to us. So that's all less than the 10 million. And then the county prorated out all of the funds that they got up to the maximum 10 million, and they allocated 331,000 to Westwood. So we have $2,047,000 in this revenue loss allowance. And this does limit how we can use the funding. So just looking now at how we can use the funding and what the board will be doing going forward this year. The ARPA funding functions as a grant, and therefore the approval process follows your normal grant approval in Massachusetts. And that's the Department of Revenue who has clarified that for Massachusetts. So for Westwood, it is the select board by vote who appropriates any of our grant funding to receive it and to allocate it. So it will be by select board vote to utilize our ARPA funding. There is no additional town meeting approval process or any other process required. So again, we have total of $4.8 million to work with. That's the 1.7 coming directly to us, and the net amount from Norfolk County, net of that 3% admin fee of just over $3 million. So $4.8 million for the board to consider. And then as we look at that, the 4.8, 2,047,000 falls under the revenue loss category, and then 2.7 million is by those other allowable uses. So really about half our funding comes under the revenue category, again, where it really should be, everything really should have been eligible under that revenue loss. So that just means we have to, the revenue loss category can be any function that the government of Westwood normally provides. The 2.7 million has to come from those specific other categories that were named in the ARPA ruling. We do at this point have some initial projects to go forward for the board's consideration. And these are projects that we're listing on the chart here, totaling $465,000. So these are just a couple of initial things to go forward. These are all projects that are already been out there, but things we know we need to address. They're projects that reach a wide range of areas in town and age groups in towns and get to a lot of different needs for our residents. So just to look at those, first would be an audit of our disability compliance for the town. Take a look at where do we stand as far as our buildings, our roads, that type of thing, as far as disability accessibility. That would be about $25,000. Second is to increase our social services program capacity, $150,000. As we've talked with the board before, particularly in our youth and family service programs, following the COVID impact, there's a real lot of need for the services that are being provided. This funding would allow those existing programs to accept in more people, residents and families off the waiting program, the waiting list, get them into the program to get them some direct services quickly. Third, the library HVAC, $100,000. That's been a bit of an ongoing issue, something we really need to get repaired so that we can make sure that that library is available to all our residents throughout the summer months. And then finally, School Street Playground, $190,000, really to go in, update that playground, expand the equipment, make sure that it's all fully accessible for all of our residents in town. So these four projects listed total $465,000. And that would just be the initial start of the board looking as we go forward to allocate our full amount here of $4.8 million. And that's it.
Pam, thank you very much. That was a great presentation. And Mr. Chair, just to elaborate a little bit on the School Street Playground, as the board's aware, we do have $60,000 in this year's capital for the School Street Playground. This $190,000, this is really to make it more accessible as far as the ground itself, as well as adding some accessible elements. And I would like to certainly thank members of the Commission on Disabilities that met with our facilities manager and our director of recreation regarding some elements that would be helpful. This 190,000 will certainly provide us with an opportunity to make the School Street Playground more accessible and have an accessible, public accessible recreation area.
Thank you, Chris. I can tell you that as someone who goes by the School Street Playground every day, there's never a time that it's empty, never. Except, well, maybe at dark, but other than that, it's being fully used from the time early in the morning to late evening. So I think it's a great project to use some of the money for. Pam, if you would be kind enough just to take down your screen for a second. Thank you. All right. Ms. LeBlanc Cummings, any issues? You're on mute just before you start.
Thank you for pointing that out. I just want to pick up on a point Pam made about investing in the community, that these funds are really for investment. And I think that's what the list presented really focuses on. Chris, as you said, with respect to the playground, being able to renovate that so it's fully accessible, universally accessible by all, the disability audit townwide as to all of our facilities so that folks can access them regardless of their abilities, I think is a huge investment to make in this town, as well as the social services and the HVAC, which is obviously a necessary component for the library so that folks can use it.
Thank you. Mr. Gotti, anything?
Nothing more to add to that.
Okay. I think they're all great projects, and I know we did some soul searching to find as to where we should begin. So thank you very much to Pam and to Christopher. And Marianne, I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
I move that the select board approve the use of $465,000 of the allocated American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funding for a townwide disability audit, $25,000, social services increased program capacity of $150,000, library HVAC, $100,000, and for the School Street Playground, $190,000.
I second that motion.
Okay, Ms. LeBlanc Cummings?
Aye.
Mr. Gotti?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Thank you very much, Pam. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pam.
And I'm sure we have a whole group of people waiting patiently to get in to come and see us.
Mr. Chair, while they are entering, could I interject for a moment?
You may. I know exactly where you're going, but yes, you may, of course.
Thank you. So I know we're about to receive an update from the chair of the Permanent Building Committee, John Cummings. I'd like to publicly disclose that John is my husband. In advance of this meeting, I sought advice from the State Ethics Commission as to whether I could participate in a matter being presented by my husband, and I was advised that if I believe I can be fair and objective, I can act on this matter after filing a disclosure form pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 268A, Section 23B3. I do believe I can act fairly and objectively in this matter, and I have filed the appropriate disclosure form. Thank you.
There's no doubt that you could act fairly and impartially. The question is, do you want to?
I do.
Participate in the discussion. All right. Mr. Cummings, I'm going to turn it over to you. You have an update for us for the Hamlin Deerfield school projects, and I know that we have Mayors with us, the chair of the school committee, and we have several people from Door Whittier. So, John, I'll let you direct the traffic, so to speak, as to how you would like to handle this.
All right. Well, if it pleases the select board, we'd like to make a presentation starting with Mayor, who headed up the school committee or the school building committee, and wish you were on it at one point. And for the last 5 years, and then Brian Jarvis, I believe from Compass, will run us through it. And then I have one final proposal for the board.
Thank you. Okay, so Mayor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think Tim is speaking on behalf of Brian. And Tim, do you have the presentation you can share?
I do, yes.
Okay, so if you could pull that up, that would be great. Thank you all. While he's doing that, I just wanted to thank you for having us. We are always happy to be back in front of the select board.
Is that Sharon?
It is, yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we are bringing you an update on the school building project. If any of you had seen the last school building committee meeting / PBC meeting, you'll know that the general contractor bids came in on June 22nd. Unfortunately, what we found that day is, for us, it really was sort of a worst case scenario with the bids coming in. I think due to the COVID pandemic and the subsequent supply chain issues that the whole country is experiencing, we just got news we did not want, specifically, as you can see from the slide. So our original construction budget was $70,380,680. We received 3 bids on bid day. Bright Builders was the lowest bidder. They came in at $73,900,000. So just right off the bat, we were about $3.5 million over budget, over the 70.3 that we had put in. We also, looking at this and analyzing these numbers, we feel as a committee that we need to include alternates 1 and 2 at this time. That was always the plan. Alternates 1 and 2, just to remind you, alternate 1 is the UV system to enhance the HVAC system and the filtration system for the air circulation in the building. And alternate 2 is the canopy that will provide shelter from the front door of the school to pretty much to the parking lot. We need this not just for aesthetics, but also for accessibility issues. These 2 are also specifically alternates that we have to take on bid day, or we can never take them. They are alternates that are structural in nature and need to be incorporated early into the project. So for that reason, we looked at this as a whole with the alternates 1 and 2. If you add those in, as you can see from the slide, that brought us to $74,352,000, which putting us approximately $4 million over budget on bid day. Again, not the news we wanted to get, but the news we received. Based on some reductions in unspent soft costs, which we will show you on the next screen, we reduced that deficit by approximately $600,000. So at the end of the day, when all the dust had settled, the total project budget with alternates 1 and 2 and carrying a 5% construction contingency, which we had always wanted to have at the start, came in $3.4 million over budget. For that reason, the school committee met twice subsequent to receiving these bids. In our last meeting on July 7th, the school committee unanimously voted to allocate the entire amount of the University Station mitigation funds, which is about $2 million. I think it's around $2,036,000 toward this project. That would bring us down clearly significantly, but we still would have an overage. And Tim, if you want to go to the next slide, we're going to get a little bit more into the numbers, and so you can see how it broke down.
So thank you, Maya. And good evening, everybody. This is the summary of the budget. Obviously, the budget has many more line items, but these are the sort of major categories. And you can see in here that the reductions that we've been looking at and resetting of the contingency. So as Maya mentioned, we've allocated some unspent or not, and some of it isn't unspent, but some we feel comfortable in reducing some of the soft cost categories, which total something close to about $400,000 plus or minus there. There also was a reduction in the technology, actually, which we had planned on earlier, that we feel comfortable about. That leaves us with if you look at the budget, the less contingencies, that gray line there is 87 million. That's the overage, this sort of start of the overage that May is talking about. Applying the contingency to that, we, that 5% obviously now is applied to a little larger number, so that contingency goes up. The owner's contingency, which is basically for items that aren't construction related, like soft cost items that are not construction contractor related, we have felt comfortable with that small reduction you see there. That leaves the overage at the 3.4 million by allocating. So we also had unspent money in the feasibility phase, which is not included in this list, which is also was $203,000 available to us that we can spend on the construction phase as well. And we have incentive money from Eversource related to the net zero energy building and grants that are coming related to that we feel it's comfortably be applied to this budget of 140,000. So that reduced that overage from 3.45 to 3.1. As Maya mentioned, the district mitigation money is $2 million. That leaves the over budget or the under budget to achieve the 5% contingency at 1.1 million. And just to sort of show some of this is the description of the allowances, the alternates that were carried. So the alternates in green were the ones that we have now in that budget. That's 1 and 2 that Maya described. That's $453,000. And then the remaining are pretty self-explanatory. Those all happen in the later phase of the project after the building is built and we're in the takedown and development of the site. So those total 645,000. The plan would be to try to, although we want to accept alternates 1 and 2 with the bid, which we need to do to secure that pricing, and plus they're actually factored more into the building of the building. But alternates 3 through 7, we would hold in abeyance. We would not be able to force the contractor to hold that money, but we certainly have a basis on negotiating a change order with them as they had to price it as part of these alternates. And if we can afford it and there's an additional contingency available as we head toward the closing of the project and we get past several of the risk items, like for instance, the ledge that needs to be removed and some of the other site related items, as well as the takedown of the building and the hazmat that comes with that, the remediation that comes with that. We would look to try to discuss with the committee putting some of these back in, and they don't have to be put in the order they're shown there. They would just be put in at the committee's discretion. So that's the summary. Is there before I go off the screen sharing, would anyone want to see another item of the presentation, or are they comfortable with what we just went over?
I think John Cummings was going to say something. So why don't we turn it over to John and then we can open it up to questions.
I see Mr. Gotti's got his hand raised.
Yes. We can
I'll wait for you, John. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, John. I can wait.
So if you go to so on this slide here, the delineation point is we need to tell the contractor up front that alternate 1 and 2 are in the project. Otherwise, it's not going to get done. And so that means 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. If everything goes smoothly and we have plenty of contingency left, we can get them all in, and they don't have to be on bid day presented to the contractor. So that's that delineation marker. And Tim, if you go back one. So on the budgets, with everything going on, we know that we're going to need, there's a good chance we're going to need 5%. We want to plan for what we need, and if we hope that we don't need it all, so we can get all the other alternates in. But what we're asking on behalf of the Permanent Building Committee and the project is that the select board allocate $1 million or $1.1 million to the project to fully fund it, so that we can get everything that we're supposed to get built in with a comfortable margin of the construction contingency of 5%. And, you know, as I was listening to Pam's presentation, which was fantastic, by the way, I would say that this fits perfectly in. The reason why the bid is up is the supply chains issue, which is an effect from COVID, and we need to be rescued by ARPA. I'll give you the electrical cost itself are $1 million more than it was in December. And that is strictly supply chain. That's just what it's costing the electricians. They're not bumping up their prices to make more money. So with that, if you have any questions, I would boldly ask that if you could, so we need to vote tomorrow, the Permanent Building Committee and the School Building Committee, to award this contract. And if you could give us indication, we know you're not going to vote on it tonight, indication that you're in favor of finding, you know, $1.1 million that, to allocate to this project, that would be best case scenario for me.
Okay, thank you, John. Mr. Gotti.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. Just a discrepancy in what I heard on the soft cost between what Maya said and what Tim said. I thought I heard Maya say 600,000. I thought I heard Tim say 400,000. So could we get some clarity around that before I go to my next question?
If you look at the project management, you'll see that there is a $400,000 savings there. And then if you go down to technology, you'll see we went from 850 to 672. So that's approximately the 600,000, adding up the reductions in those two categories.
Okay. Now you're talking about a $1.1 million gap, but on the next page, there's another almost $650,000 that is short of what the original complete project as it was put to the town, right? That's 645,000. So is the number 1.1 or is it closer to 1.7?
So we're not proposing, well, May, why don't you explain? Yes, that.
So the 1.1 gets us to a 5% contingency. As it stands now, without the 1.1, we would go into the project with a 3.5% contingency. We feel that is very, very tight. We feel the 5% contingency is very healthy. And with that 5% contingency, what we are hoping is that we get 3 through 7 into the project through that 5% contingency. So, you know, while nothing is clearly, as we have learned, nothing is written in stone, we're hoping that with the 5% contingency, so the 1.1 in additional funds, we will get numbers 3, in addition to 1 and 2, we will get 3 through 7 into the project. We just can't say that at this time because we're not taking them on bid day. John and Tim, do you agree with that?
That's spot on. And we don't have to indicate to the builder that we're going to take them at all until we're halfway through the project. So by that point, all the ledge will be done. We'll know where that is, and we'll have a much better indication of the change orders that had to come across and where we'll be on the contingency level, so we can add alternates 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 back into the project.
Okay. So the number as you all see it is 1.1.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I don't know that we are prepared to make a commitment tonight. Obviously, we want this to be a successful project. I guess I would ask Chris and Pam if you might get together and explore different possibilities for how we might be able to help should we get to the place where this 1.1 is absolutely needed, right? Because again, this is too important a project for the town to have, you know, have a gap like this. But at the same time, I think we have to do our due diligence to say, where might that source of funds come from?
We can certainly do that. And we could certainly bring that back as a discussion item for your next meeting, which is scheduled for August 1st, if you'd like.
I think that makes most sense. I would ask my colleagues for their point of view.
Yeah, I mean, my gut feeling is yes, I do support it. And I think we just have to find the source of money. It's that simple. And I think no one better than Pam and Chris to figure that out.
I agree. Clearly, the town has made a huge commitment to this project. And we are where we are. So I fully support the thought of having Chris and Pam do some due diligence on this so that we can hopefully discuss this at our next meeting and perhaps make a vote at that time. But I reiterate the support that my colleagues have expressed for this project, and I want to thank everybody on this call for all of the work that you're doing on it.
John, may I, just procedurally speaking, there's nothing precluding you from awarding the contract without having that commitment here tonight, correct?
No, it's correct. We will be voting tomorrow. The PBC will be voting tomorrow. Just recognizing that when we vote tomorrow, we will be taking, a 3.5% contingency going forward with this project.
And the people on the board are, I mean, they're very anxious about 3.5%. And if there's an indication from the select board that they're going to, we trust if you say we're going to figure out how we're going to allocate $1 million, so it's earmarked for the project, then that'll go a long way in the deliberations tomorrow.
So you're taking the contingency down from the 5 to the 3.5.
Right.
And
at that
tomorrow
point,
we have to do that to accept it and give out the bid to the contractor or award the bid. Then yes, we have to do that. We can put the $1 million if and when you figure out the $1.1 million, then that'll bring the project right up to snuff at the 5%, and we'll be able to go right through it. Get the school building built. And something everybody's proud of.
Point of clarification. So I thought alternate 1 and 2 plus the 5% contingency was what got us to the $1 million gap.
Overage.
Not the reducing it to the 3.5% contingency. I'm just a little confused on that.
So tomorrow, the only funds we have allocated so far is what we have in budget plus the 2 million that the school committee allocated. When you add in the addition, if we didn't have that 2 million from the school committee, I don't think we would be able to move the project forward. We would not have enough of a contingency once we paid for everything we need to pay for in construction. Once we got the 2 million from the school committee, that bumped our contingency up to 3.5%. And we are, it's not ideal to move a project forward with 3.5%. It's particularly in these times. I think in maybe a year or two ago, you would have seen projects coming in under 3% contingency. But now, as we have seen, given how off our cost estimates were, we honestly have no idea. So 3.5% is not ideal to move a project forward, but it's doable. What it means is if we don't, if we run out of money, then we're looking to cut things like technology and FF&E at the end of the project. But it is doable to move the project forward at 3.5%. And the cost of not moving the project forward, Compass and Doran Whittier have both told us that's even worse, right? It's worse to not move the project forward, to table the project, mothball it, try and rebid it, than it would be to move this forward at a 3.5%. So tomorrow, we know we can move it forward at 3.5%. If the select board then allocates an additional 1.1% to this project, then we're moving the project forward at 5%. But we're comfortable.
So 3.5% would be the bare minimum that we could move this forward. And to put this project in the best light and best foot, it would really the 5%. And that doesn't have to be this month. Next month is fine.
Right, and that includes alternates 1 and 2, to be clear. It includes alternates
Right,
1 and 2.
But what I thought I heard you say at the start was that to get the rest of the alternates, you would need to use some of the contingency. So you feel you can get all 7 items on the alternate list?
At
plus-
5%.
At 5%.
With-
We
so
cannot
at the
do
end of
that
the
at
project-
3.5.
Right, so at the end of the
Okay.
project, or halfway through the project, we'll know exactly where we are so that we can order the alternates, which is the multi-purpose field irrigation, fencing around the multi-purpose field, site groupings, which is raised bed, boulders, picnic tables, furnishing groups, bleachers, and phase 2 landscaping. So none of that has to be, that's after the building's built, right? When the Hanlon building itself, the original Hanlon comes down, that's when all that'll go in. So we'll be putting those requisitions in at that time. With the bare minimum, what we need to start to go forward is the 2.5. And to do the project correctly and get it all the way to the end with what everybody had voted on, we're going to need the full 5% contingency. And from that contingency, we feel very strongly that all these alternates that I just read off, alternate 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, will be able to be put in place into the project. Just not on the day one.
Okay. All right. So Chris, you and Pam will take this up and come back with different options for us to consider at our next meeting.
Yes.
So do we, the motion?
Can I just one question?
Yes, you can.
Or Mr. Chairs, I don't know how it's working right now. On the spreadsheet, it said $2 million, but I heard also all mitigation funds. Is that the total amount of mitigation funds that's going to be used?
The total amount of mitigation funds that we have, as I think I recall, Lemma and Emily telling me it was around $2,035,000. The spreadsheet reflects 2 million because I honestly could not change the spreadsheet. It was a very complicated reason why I couldn't change it to add the 35,000. But the school committee voted to allocate 100% of the mitigation funds, whatever that amount is.
So just for then the delta would be whatever that delta is what the ask is to the board. I just want to be clear when I speak with Pam about coming back with a recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, it's 1.1, whatever that number is, minus the change that's in the mitigation fund. Yeah, and we
It'll
can
be
get
very
those.
close to 0.1.
We can get those numbers. It'll be very close to 1.1, but we can get those numbers tomorrow. I just couldn't manipulate the PowerPoint.
I completely understand. Thank you for the clarification.
Ms. LeBlanc, did you want to do a motion?
Sure. So I move that the select board request that Chris Coleman and Pam Dukeman review town funding sources for a potential appropriation toward the Hanlon Deerfield school building project and to report back to us at our next meeting on August 1st, 2022.
Just a point of order to Pat, is this something that requires a vote?
You're on mute, Pat. I just think Robert would at least give the PBC a little more confidence that we were at least instructing Pam and Chris to.
I'm not sure it requires a vote, but I agree with Mr. Walsh that it gives the PBC something to act on properly tomorrow morning.
Okay. Then I would second the motion that Mary Ann just made.
Okay, Ms. LeBlanc Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Thank you very much for joining us. Good luck. I'm sure.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your
Thank
time and
you.
your support.
We very much
Thank you.
appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our old business. Mr. Hearn, I think you're actually on my agenda for an update on the expiration of the remote meeting update.
Well,
Happens on
it's
Thursday.
it actually happens at midnight Friday morning. So last week, the Senate passed a 3-page bill to extend the remote meeting till December 15th, 2023. Later in the week on Thursday, the House passed its bill that extended it to March 31st, 2023. The House bill is some 20 pages long. The Senate bill is some 3 pages long. There's some significant differences. It needs to go to conference committee now, and they need to work out those differences. And hopefully they can do it by the end of the week and get it on the governor's desk for signature. But I have not seen any activity since the House voted its bill.
Do we know has a joint committee even met yet?
I don't know the answer to that. Not that I've seen. There may be informal discussions. There's been no reports from my sources of what's going on. It's up until Thursday when the House bill passed, we were getting regular updates from various sources. It has been radio silent since then.
Yeah, Chris, I haven't heard anything through MMA. Chris, have you heard anything?
I have not heard anything, other than the 10-day period that the governor has to act.
The governor must either sign the bill within 10 days or it would be called a pocket veto if he chooses not to sign it. Hopefully the governor, if this comes through, will move quickly on it.
Yeah, I think the lieutenant governor expressed approval from both her and the governor in the event it does get to their desk. So hopefully that will happen sooner than later. But all right, to be continued. I guess there'll be some meetings that may happen next week in person unless this bill gets approved. So, all right. Thank
And
you very much. Yeah.
I will look at the calendar to make sure those meetings early next week are properly posted.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hearn. All right, finally, on our old business, we have appointments and reappointments of boards and committees. So we have several appointments that are asking for us today. The first is Bill Siebert, he's to be on the cemetery commission, excuse me. He is discussed the position with Brendan Ryan and is being recommended for appointment. And since I spent time with Bill in Aruba, I'd be happy to recommend Bill for the cemetery commission. We also have asked to reappoint Stephen David as a member of the Conservation Commission. I've known Stephen for a long time as well, and I would fully support his appointment. We have the rec department. We have some openings and term limits. We have a total of 7 members, and Sheila Moylan is being just completed her 2nd term on the Recreation Committee and would like to be reappointed to a 3rd term. And what happens in your 3rd term, she would also be happy to be the chair of the Recreation Committee in the event she's reappointed. So we also have several appointments to the Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Committee, which has not been able to meet because they do not have enough for a quorum. 8 members are required, 5 are needed for a quorum. And currently there are only 3 sitting on the Pedestrian, Bicycle and Safety Committee. We have Steve Olenoff, Michael Kraft, and I'm going to butcher this name and I apologize ahead of time. I'll just call it Akadia Colossi. I don't know. Any ideas? No. Anyone know? Okay.
I think that may be Gela. Is that
okay?
Is that right?
I'm sure that's the name. Much
That's
easier.
right, Kayla Clossy.
Okay, thank you. And so there are some residents who have expressed an interest to join the pedestrian and bike committee. We are being asked to hold off on those, I think. Am I correct on that, Mr. Coleman? Other than the reappointments?
Yes, Mr. Walsh, we have a process of meeting with the chair and conducting some informal discussions or interviews with any interested party. So we haven't done that yet. But we'll certainly schedule time with the chair and those candidates who are interested.
Okay, and finally, we've been asked to appoint the ex officio appointment to the Pedestrian and Bike Committee, which would be Mr. Coleman, Mr. Corchin, and of course, Kathleen Wynn from the Planning Board as the liaison. Any questions or issues from other members of our board? Marianne?
No questions.
Mr. Gotti?
Yeah, with regard to the pedestrian bike safety, are we able, Chris, to do the appointments for a shorter period of time? I think one of the things that the three of us should be talking about is sort of looking at the mission and charge of the group, because I think we might benefit from some type of traffic advisory committee to advise the select board, and some of the things that currently fall within the purview of pedestrian bike safety, might be subsumed by this other group. When you think about some of the things that we've just dealt with, whether you're talking about the Forbes Road or the Pond Street, there's things where it's really been more about volume, or speed. So I'd like to maybe take a look at that where there's some engineering potentially as part of that, but I don't think we have the time to do that now. So I guess one of the things that I would ask Chris is, how might we approach this and vet the idea of some type of traffic advisory committee?
So, Mr. Chair, I believe, and I will certainly defer to town council, I believe the board can appoint for a year. I don't believe you have to appoint for the full term. So you could appoint and reappoint these individuals through this fiscal year, so through June 30th, 2023. The board, through the chair's leadership, could certainly discuss a traffic advisory committee and the makeup and the individuals or the different skill set that you would like to have on that traffic advisory committee over the course of this year. And if that's a direction that the board would want to go in fiscal year 24, I believe the board could certainly establish that committee, identify designees, and work with those different boards and committees to form that committee effective fiscal year 24.
Is that correct, Mr. Hearn? We can do a 1 year.
I believe it is. I believe the Pedestrian Bike Safety Committee is a creation of the select board. So it's your discretion what you want to do with it. It's nothing's charter related. So you can do less than full term appointments, and then you can vote to sunset it and establish a new committee with a different charge if you so choose.
Okay, I would be okay with that. But
I would as well. And I think it's a great idea, Rob, about a traffic safety advisory committee. I mean, just given how often these issues come up.
Okay.
And the only clarification, Michael, that I want to ask is, I heard you mention people who are currently on the committee, but I think maybe one or two of those have also since had terms expire. So I'm just not clear on who those are that we're reappointing versus, I know the newer folks who've asked to become part of it, Chris and the chair would vet. So I'm not sure on the names. Is it just the three that you mentioned?
So Mr. Holenoff is already on through June of 2023. Mr. Kraft, his term ends in June 30th of 2022. So it ended 2 weeks ago. And then we have, how do you say her name, Nora?
Kella.
Kella, okay. Kella's term has ended and she would like to be reappointed. The other three that have expressed an interest have not been vetted yet, four who have expressed an interest, they've been not vetted yet, so we're not reappointing them. But we are appointing the ex officio members, which will be Chris, Todd, and Kathleen Wynn from the planning board. So we just be reappointing the original three.
And Mr. Chair, if this were to go forward this evening, I would anticipate that we will certainly reach out to Mr. Kraft to schedule those discussions with those interested individuals, and most with the goal of bringing this back to the board at your August 1st meeting.
The only one that I think, we could potentially fast track, Chris, is if I remember the names of those who have applied. Dave Atkins is one of them, and he has served on both the planning board, and I believe he was maybe the founding member of the Ped Bike Safety. So, I mean, he is certainly one that I think we could include if we were so moved to have him be part of this group that we approved tonight.
If the board was going to go in that direction, I would recommend, in addition to Mr. Atkins, Maria as well. I have not had a conversation with Mr. Kraft, so if the board was inclined to subject to Mr. Kraft's support, to appoint Mr. Atkins as well as Maria. That would give the Ped Bike Committee the 5 members to meet their quorum needs.
All for a 1-year term.
For a 1-year term, yes. You already have Mr. Olenoff. If the board were to reappoint the 2 members that were previously discussed, and then those other members, because they have served in other capacities already, I just have not had a conversation with Mr. Kraft yet. I don't want to put any words in his mouth, but if Mr. Kraft was in support, we could certainly move forward, and then they would have 5 members. And we could still
Okay,
go
why don't
through
we-
interviews of the remaining ones.
Yeah, why don't we do the first 4 and then we can go back to the pedestrian and bike committee.
Sounds good.
Okay, so a motion for all except the Ped Bike, yes? Okay, I move that the select board vote to reappoint/appoint individuals to the following committees as follows. A, that we appoint Bill Seibert as a member on the Cemetery Commission with a term to expire on June 30, 2025. That we reappoint Stephen David as a member of the Conservation Commission with a term to expire on June 30, 2025. That we reappoint Sue McGowan as a member of the Westwood Environmental Action Committee with a term to expire on June 30, 2025. And that we reappoint Sheila Moylan as a member on the Recreation Commission with a term to expire on June 30, 2025, and to appoint Rania Kelly as an associate member on the Recreation Commission with a term to expire on June 30, 2023.
I second that motion.
Okay, Ms. LeBlanc Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Okay, now to pedestrian and bike safety committee.
So we have, just so I'm clear, we've got the 4 folks we talked about in addition to the ex officio. I think that's what we're talking about. Okay, so I move that the select board appoint the following to the Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Committee, to reappoint Michael Kraft and Kella Clossy as members, along with David Atkins and Maria Constantini, for a 1-year term to expire on June 30, 2023. And also that we appoint Chris Coleman and Ted Korchin as ex officio members on the Ped Bike Safety Committee with the term to expire on June 30, 2023, and to appoint Kathleen Wynn as the Planning Board liaison on the Ped Bike Safety Committee with a term to expire on June 30, 2023.
Okay, the only amendment to that is it's Todd Korchin, not Ted Korchin, but yes.
Did I say Ted?
You did.
You did.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Todd. I know that. That's terrible. Thank you.
Don't worry,
what
that's his
happens when
twin
you-
brother. You're fine.
See what happens when you don't show up to a meeting, Todd? We rename you.
You second, Mr.
I would
Gotti?
second that motion. I do.
Okay. Ms. LeBlanc Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, there's a Q&A and
There is, thank you. Okay. There are a number of new satellites for now. So Ron, you'd have to put your address in for us, please.
I think it's down below.
Oh, yes, it is. Thank you. Thank you. There are a number of new satellites in orbit now. Want to be sure that the new contract with Verizon is open for Westwood residents to be able to use these systems, TV, etc. As a Westwood senior, would like to more options for TV service. My yearly expenses run just over $2,400 per year. Simply want more options. Thank you, Mr. Sutter. So far, the only options that we really have for cable television at this point are Verizon and Comcast, but you can bet that we are always looking for ways to increase the ways for our residents to be able to enjoy the internet and television at the best price possible. So we will continue to take that under advisement, and in the event things come up, I'm sure my colleagues and I would be happy to pursue any interest that you might have as well. Thank you. All right, I hope that is sufficient. Tish, you can mark that as answered. And the last thing that we have on our agenda this evening is approval of the regular meeting minutes from June 21st, 2022. That either have any changes to the minutes?
No changes.
Nor
No
do I.
changes. I move that we approve the minutes from our June 21, 2022 meeting.
Second.
Okay, Ms. LeBlanc Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Our next meeting right now is scheduled for August 1st. It may be in person. We don't know yet. So
Mr.
stay tuned.
Chairman, could I just
Yes.
give a super quick update on one item? I
Yeah.
just wanted to let the board know that in advance of some debt that we will be issuing for the new school project, we did recently undergo an update to our credit rating. And we were just notified late this afternoon by S&P that they have reaffirmed our AAA rating. And while we did expect that, it's always nice news to get, particularly during these difficult times, a great reflection on our select board and how you handle the town's finances and all of our town's committees and our residents. So just wanted to let you know that we got that good news today.
Well, thank you, Pam. That's
Thank
great
you.
news. And I just want to let you know too, I have engaged Pam to come to the MMA Select Board seminar, which we hold for new members of select boards across the Commonwealth. And Pam graciously donated her time to come and explain how budgets work to new select board members. So thank you, Pam. I appreciate that. And the members of the select board across the state will be better off because of your presentation coming up a week from Saturday. So thank you.
Yes, I think that was a weak moment, Mike, for a Saturday in July that I said yes to your request.
Well,
Mr.
fortunately,
Chair,
it's only one, Pam, so that's
Only one.
all.
Mr. Chair, if I may just share an email that we received with
Yes.
the board. So we received an email from Mr. John Healy of the Westwood Little League. And the big topic of this was regarding the Riley Classic. The biggest topic of conversation after baseball was the superior condition of both fields. It seems like all of our visitors were talking about was the condition of Morrison and Roach and the dedication to the field crew. That he wanted to echo those sentiments. As you know, that he's been with the program, both with his kids for a number of years, and admittedly, sometimes he's forgotten to taken for granted how great the fields have been. John, the crews were outstanding. Example of the guys treat work not just as a job. You can see the pride in which they carry out their work, and the end product was arguably the nicest Little League fields in Eastern Massachusetts. I just want to thank Mr. Healy for those kind words, and especially want to thank our DPW team members for the hard work that they do each and every day, and to share with them some nice words of appreciation for members of our community.
There's no doubt about it, Chris. It was on my, my agenda of things to say, but when Todd didn't come, I decided I might hold it till next meeting. But anyway, thank you. All right. I think that's it. I will take a motion to adjourn. As I said, our next meeting is scheduled for August 1st as of this date. So whether it'll be in person or by Zoom is yet to be determined.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. Mr.
Second.
Gotti. All right. Mr. LeBlanc Cummings.
Aye.
Mr. Gotti.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the great weather we're having. The only one complaining about the weather is my lawn.